we are live streaming now. Hi,
Yay!
ladies.
Hi. We have all three of us finally. But you know, if the pandemic taught us anything, it's like patience with Zoom and technology and things like that. So yeah, like you said, talking about handling stress, I'm like, phew, this is nothing. Well, welcome back everybody to another webinar from the Lady Leader series, which has turned into just all doctor series really. But today we're going to be discussing a topic that I think came because Ash, you and I were just talking about like, what do we keep hearing about? Like, what are we hearing? Because we both talk to lots and lots of offices, lots of doctors, lots of people in offices. And the thing that kind of kept coming up, we were noticing is people's stress levels seem to be kind of rising or in different areas or starting to get really high. And actually I talked to Jake Conway, the numbers guy, and I was like, are you seeing this? And he was like, yes, I am seeing this. So I think, you know, our topic today is stress management for dental practice, especially the leaders. What do we do in times like this? But, you know, I think the first thing I thought we could start with, ladies, is what are we seeing as some of the reasons that people's stress levels now at this point, 2.5 years kind of later-ish, why are we seeing people being stressed out maybe more so? Debbie, what are you seeing?
Are you thinking team members or patients or both?
That's what I'm saying. Why are we seeing offices and leaders, especially dentists, office managers, the leaders of the practice, why are we so stressed out, you think?
I think we're stressed out in large because of staffing at sometimes. No hygienist, of course, is a big one that we have. And we're seeing a lot more calls of emergency patients coming in than what we've normally had. And there's nowhere to put them. Mm-hmm. So that is stressful because we always want to do our best to take care of patients. That's one of our core values is to serve patients. So it's hard for us not to be able to get those patients in. Yeah. So patients are upset about not being able to get in. And just in general, I think grumpier.
Yeah.
So those are some big ones that I think of.
Yeah. Ash, what about you?
Yeah, same things. And I think, I mean, even with team, I mean, we have crazy inflation stuff going on and that affects, you know, team, you know, dynamics and man, I don't even, I whether you believe it or not, I feel like they keep saying the Mercury and retrograde thing. And I can't help but laugh. I'm like, probably like at this point, there's so much else going on. Yeah. Probably part of it.
Yeah. Well, and I do think with economic distress, naturally if you watch kind of what socially people are doing, it's stressing people out outside of the office. Well, I always joke with our team that I'm like, you think about us and we're all really self-aware. We've all been together for a long time and we get stressed out. Can you only imagine, you know, just people who, you know, maybe don't have some of the tools that we do, how stressed out they are. And so I think you combine rising costs for everything, gas prices, supply chains right now are often, you know, things are being held up a lot. I see constantly people are like, hey, can you guys find any IV solution bags? Can you find any, you know, lidocaine or whatever? So I think combining all those different parts. And then the last part that I'm hearing is, and I think we can attest to, Deb, is a lot of us have had these really amazing team members who kind of keep getting the punches, knocking down and having to get back up. And they're tired, you know, so it just feels really, and the word I say is relentless sometimes. So you keep throwing in all these little jabs and then like you said, maybe Mercury and retrograde, and it just feels like everybody's a little bit exhausted, a little bit grumpier, a little more impatient. So I think the first thing is to recognize like, hey, it's okay. It's a normal thing. Everyone's going through it. And I think that's kind of the first part of it is recognizing it. And then, you know, the other thing that I was thinking is so many doctors that I talk to have never been through any kind of downward economic cycle. And so, you know, for the last, and I was just talking to my assistant, but really, I think I heard that prior to 40 years, like we have had such a great market for 40 years. So many doctors weren't even doing dentistry, obviously, or even thinking of dentistry. So, this is just kind of a new phenomenon already. And then you throw in inflation and, impending downturns of economy, then a pandemic. I just think there's so many people that it's like, we just don't know what to always do with all of this. So I think that heightens it, just the level of uncertainty with all the things we talked about. I don't know what you ladies think.
I probably haven't even been in dentistry during that recession either. So this has all been pretty new to me. Not being able to find any team, like the supplies, it's all new. It's just hard.
Yeah. Well, and same thing, Ashley, probably you've been in dentistry a long time and you don't know probably. Yeah.
When I came in, they were just talking about, even 2008 and there was a couple posts inside of DSN, that were like, hey, we're seeing this crazy inflation and all these things, and this hasn't happened since 2008. What are you guys doing to prepare? So first of all, I love that we're talking about it inside the community. That makes my heart happy. Like, that's why we're here. But yeah, it's completely new for so many leaders, dentists, employers. Also, we went through a massive employment shift. People learned that they can get jobs remotely. And so finding team members is a struggle because people don't have to and don't want to go back into a physical office to work. So this is a completely new era of employment.
Yeah. And that's what I tell everybody is I actually did have a practice during 2008 and 9, and I remember it. But I say this is still different. There was things that I did that I'm still able to do, and they are helpful, which we'll kind of get into. But the difference is the supply chain and the labor shortages. There's so many things that are added to this that have definitely made me have to really kind of think inside the box, outside the box, around the box. So, but I think, as we dive into it, how do we manage kind of our stress, what we're taking home to our families with all of this? And for me, it always comes down to usually some sort of mindset and perspective. Like, that's usually where it has to start for me. And then it always goes into what can I control? What tactical things can I do? And that's always where I go. So I thought, well, let's kind of dig into both of those. And I think, let's start with the tactical stuff first, because it's objective and that one's a little bit easier. And so I think as we're dealing with all this stress level, I think the first thing to think of always, and Debbie will say, like, yes, we hear this all the time, but like, truly, like, what can we control? What's within our control? Because often we're spending so much time thinking about the other stuff and not enough time thinking about what we can control. And so when I thought about it, one of the first things that I know we did, especially with the labor shortages, was what can we outsource? What is a reputable thing that we can outsource to that we're going to get good results? And that's one of the first things I tell people is it's pushed so many of the clients I talk to insurance verification outsourced, accounts payable or accounts receivable, both actually outsourced, even actually phone centers being able to answer their calls for them. But I think that's one of the first places, that I suggest looking when we're having those shortages or you're feeling like you can't get everything done. What about you guys? When it comes to outsourcing, is that some of the main areas you guys think of?
Yeah, I think of insurance verification, phone calls for sure. Even team members working from home to prepare for the schedule. If you're short-staffed in the front office, maybe have somebody that could work remotely and assist your team in that way. The other thing I think, and maybe this isn't so much outsourcing, but currently our front office is tracking our phone calls. Like, what are the reasons we're receiving phone calls and how much time are we spending on those phone calls? And if we're getting an abundance of something that's taking up so much time, can we figure out something else to decrease that call volume?
Mm-hmm. And that's what Julie and I just did that yesterday. And I was going through that call log and it was so funny. I said, I know one thing we're going to do immediately, and Brittany and I can actually do it starting tomorrow. And it's not, and I said, what if we just reduced 50% of these calls, Julie, by doing this, this, and this, how much would that help? And it was going to save like an hour a week of time, which, you know, it's like not huge stuff, but it's stuff you can control. So yeah, that's a great one, Debbie. Yeah. Anything else, you know, Ash, that I know you love outsource stuff too, but
yeah, I think those are two dental office big ones for sure. And I love, Deb, what you said too about getting creative with the virtual work, right? Like what can you be flexible with your team? Like, hey, you know, this can be a part in-person, part at home position. Like, how can you think around the box, like you said, Summer, kind of, you know, work with the team that you do have, or, you know, place positions that are enticing. You know, I'm hiring for a ton of positions. And I'm always telling my clients, you know, be sure that you, or if you're open to it, if we place this ad as part virtual, part in person, we're going to get a lot more traction. So it is about being more creative, and that does mean giving up some control, which is hard, and scary, but it's more scary to not have these things be done.
Yep. Exactly. Well, and that's what I would say kind of forces all to realize is it's going to be done maybe not exactly how you want, or potentially not at all, like phone calls. And I, you know, Deb, I think too, like she can kind of speak to this as well, but we moved our entire billing department outsourced, and it wasn't on purpose. It was because our main billing lead was like, I'm moving 3 hours away. Do we see a way to make this work? And what we realized is not only could she be moved outsourced, but we have our own insurance verifier, but she's an hour away. And then Debbie's daughter, Sarah, is our scheduler prep and does a lot of things with insurance and the schedule. She's remote and lives in the town away. And so we created an entire department that ended up being remote just because we had to. And what's funny is now we're all like, it actually works pretty well. And it exposed some pretty decent holes that we had in our office as far as how reliant we were on, you know, Allison being right there in the office. So it's actually created a little bit of a sense of autonomy for certain people. But we were able to move an entire department completely outsourced. So yeah,
well, it's really taught us how to hold those team members accountable, and how do we need to do check-ins? When do we need to talk? When do we need to meet? We've had to kind of revamp that whole, because, you know, when you're in the office, you can do a quick check-in, but when they're gone, you just can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then also, one thing that we have done is, if you're limited on team members, well, when one front office team member is out sick, that's a huge hole to fill. So we've had team members that say, I've got to stay home with my sick kid, or I'm sick. What I can do from home is get on and do confirmations, at least do something to kind of help the team that's left in the office.
Yeah. Well, and we have such flexibility with the sense of sometimes people have to bring their kids during breaks or something like that. If they're like, hey, I don't have a choice, we're like, oh my heavens, yes. You know, bring them in, because we've had to learn how to get flexible with iPads and our break room and all of that to be able to accommodate, you know, things like that. And I've had to take advantage of it, as everybody knows, in my offices as well. So, yeah. And I think, you know, beyond outsourced, whether it be to other companies or potentially within your office, I think one of the underutilized areas, and I will completely extol Ashley in this, but I love using administrative assistants, as everybody knows, and executive assistants. And they don't have to only do things like, a lot of times I think people think of like picking up your dry cleaning, you know, paying your personal bills. Our assistants do insurance credentialing for new doctors. Debbie, they do so much of our hiring for us. They repost ads. They make the new patient gift bags. They order all of our marketing stuff. There's so many jobs right now that your admin team up front can be done remotely by some of these admin people. Ashley, I mean, yeah.
preach, sister.
Yes. I love them.
Right?
We
And
do.
they don't have to be dental specific trained. That's such a hard
No.
thing to find anyway, you know, but someone can put together gift bags and enjoys putting together gift bags. Like there are people out there who are super motivated just to help with these specific types of tasks. It gives them fulfillment and joy. And you know, they're out there and they can be utilized in so many ways, you know, document creation and even like birthday, anniversary, you know, follow up with patients, you know, you know, elevating that level of service to your patients that makes it look like, you know, I mean, you obviously are on your game, but those are the things that people remember within an office anyway. And, you know, giving this specifically to someone who enjoys it and can focus on it versus your front office who's more stressed about filling the schedule and who canceled and these types of things. You know, you can have someone who's dropping the love bombs or, you know, who can focus on those patient relations, whatever it might be. And yeah, there's just so much that non-dental specific admin, executive assistant team members can do that can save you so much time and money. Honestly, people are like, oh no, it's another expense. It's another employee, but what you're paying your front office person, you know, or that the money you're losing by them not scheduling correctly or making mistakes because they can't focus, like it's well worth another solid admin or executive assistant position.
Yeah. And that's really, I mean, they can reach out to you. You might want to put your link just in case, Ashley, I think in there, but Ashley will help you find these people. And I know for me, she found my last two and they've been amazing. Jillian and Amanda have completely taken over huge chunks of things. And I do other stuff outside the offices that they help with. But I mean, gosh, Debbie, I mean, the level of tasks that these women do for us, they recreated our entire VIP program for our patients, you know, created all the swag that we now give out and the marketing for it. They do so much of that for us. So that's a really underutilized, super inexpensive way to get some control over what might be stressing you out right now. So we talked about outsourcing. We've talked about outsourcing with our current team members if you have some flexibility with that. We've talked about checking the call volume to see if there's anything you can do different, using EAs, AAs as much as possible. Personal assistance still for sure is really helpful for stress management. Having people help you at home is really great. I think another thing, and I know everybody probably does this, but you know, you really utilizing software systems like Modento or Flex to ensure that to the highest capability, you're outsourcing all patient communication, you know, forms being loaded into Open Dental. You know, Mango is one we recently switched to because we finally could in our area. And it does these bounce back texts so that if our team can't answer the phone, a text goes to the patient that says, we're so sorry we missed your call. Please text here. And they can do everything via text with that patient, which I think patients love that. So I think there's a lot of really great resources out there that if you're feeling some of the stress for being short-staffed, I think outsourcing is one of the best places that you can start in all those different areas. But anything that I didn't mention in that realm that we can think of?
Well, the only thing that we've kind of had to really like set those patient expectations up, and we've really worked on this, is sending out the new patient forms and being very direct with the patients or new patients. I'm going to send you these new patient forms. Please have these completed before you arrive to the office. Just teaching your patients new behavior that we're going to expect from them when they come into the office. It does help us. Just tell them what you want.
Totally.
Yeah. Debbie, that's such a great one that I didn't even think of, was that all of this, sometimes our stress is really because of us letting the patients down. And rather than potentially just having really frank conversations with our patients of what they can expect, you know, I joke, like, weren't we all a little surprised when we first started going to restaurants and there was no waiters or waitresses? It was click on the QR code. And, you know, I know at some of ours, Debbie, we don't even have them come to our table at all. You have to go up and get your food too. And in the beginning, it was a little weird, and now we're all so used to it. But that's such a great one that I think really setting patient expectations of, hey, we understand that this is new and this is different, but this is really going to help us to expedite the process and give you the best experience, but it is going to be different just due to the situation that we're in. So,
and that goes with confirmation calls too. We tell our patients they're going to get a confirmation call or a notification. We are going to expect you to confirm your appointment. If not, we will, because we have so many patients waiting. Yeah.
Debbie's like, I'm feeling it right now.
Don't not show up.
I know that kills our team when a hygiene appointment is a no-show, no call, no show. I think our hygienist weeps slightly, but yeah, so the other things that I think we can control that I think sometimes they go past us quickly without even putting much attention to it. But, I know in our offices, we're short-staffed even of dental assistants, and I have a dental assisting school, but just due to our demographic, as you know, Ashley, it's a tough area up in the mountain resort community, really expensive housing that we're in shortage of. We don't have, a plethora of dental assistants. So often we have doctors that have one assistant per day. So how do we maximize this and maintain production? And one of the first things that I say is like really intentional hygiene exams. And I know it sounds crazy, but being careful about what we're treatment planning, how we're treatment planning, because as I tell the doctors, truly, if we're not doing quadrant dentistry and we're having a bazillion little appointments, those little appointments, I hate to say it, it's not just affecting the DAs, it's affecting the entire team. It's a higher call volume, it's a higher check-in, check-out rate, it's a higher treatment planning rate. It just uses more resources all across the board. And so it's such an area that I think can quickly get glossed over, but really great intentional hygiene exams to ensure we're maximizing that patient appointment when they're there. It's always been important, but I know for us, when we're short-staffed, it's even more important. I think you'd agree, probably, Ashley and Debbie.
Yes.
I love that it's kind of like seeing the forest through the trees, right? So you're like, it's not just about this that needs to be taken care of, like, and it's affecting all of these things that then affect you too, doctor, as it affects the way and your ability to do dentistry if the team behind you can't run efficiently. So it's about getting that, getting your docs on board with that mindset so that they can be as effective as they want to be too, and are capable of.
Right. It's hard to have one assistant with constant 30-minute appointments and flipping. And I've seen those days and I watch it and I'm like, oh, we just made that day so hard. And we ended up at, a low production amount. So I think that's one. I think, now's the time, if you're starting to get patient pushback for treatment plans of all different sizes, now's the time to reinvent how you present treatment plans. Because discretionary income for a lot of people is starting to become a little more concerning, and they're really having to decide, like, that's a huge gas bill and a huge grocery bill. Do I want to do dentistry? And things that used to be not a big deal, I think are becoming a bigger deal. And I know I'm seeing that. And so I think getting really good with making sure your TCs know how to present not just third-party financing, but they know how to talk to the patients, to connect with them where they are. And a lot of times that's just making sure our patients understand that it's going to become more expensive later if we don't get this taken care of. So I understand financially, this may be a concern, and I would never want to get you into any kind of financial burden. That's not what we want to do. But I'm really worried because if this fractures, it's going to be triple the cost later. And that could be 2 months from now or 2 weeks from now. So how do I help you figure out how to budget this for you to have success, all the way across the board here? And I think having your treatment coordinators really getting good at that. If before they used to be able to just kind of plunk down the treatment plan, okay, great, sign it. Nobody, really even noticed anything. I think now's the time that it's really good to have empathetic, connected treatment planners who are sitting in that room, able to connect with the patient, understand their concerns financially, and convey how they are there to help fit this into their budget. Anything along with that for anybody?
I would just say, make sure you've got some, your boundaries in place. You don't want to have a patient come in and play to your sympathies, and then you get the business into trouble.
Right.
That
Oh,
happens too.
absolutely. Of
Yeah.
course. And that doesn't mean, and by the way, if anybody does this, I did this a bazillion times, but that doesn't mean, you know, turning the crown into a year-long worth of payments. Absolutely not. And that's what I think Debbie was trying to say. But I do think sometimes there's ways to actually talk to them about 3 payments, with the third payment being due on the crown seat day, you know, or there's just various ways, or third-party financing. You know, there's a plethora out there. I think we all know them, but sometimes treatment coordinators aren't really well versed in being able to go through those kind of options, I think. So now's the time to do that. One of the other tactical areas is, I joke that really great booming economic times allow for our overhead to stay low without having to maybe try quite so hard. And so I joke with doctors, like, now is the time, I think, to really check your overhead. So making sure that you're the one looking at your detailed P&L, you're the one looking at your supplies, you're looking at your credit card. You can have, you know, assistants helping you do that from home as well, but it's important that you're knowing where your dollars are going, because, you know, I've talked to doctors who they had no idea how much they were spending in just Amazon stuff. Yep. Or certain phone bills, which I know it sounds silly, but you know, a lot of times some of these phone bills are easily negotiated. There's a lot of things that are easily negotiated, but when times are good, you don't think about it. And so I think overhead, great systems, and budgets put in place. If you've never had budgets for your back office and front office, if they have no idea, now's the time. I think that's a really good tactical thing that if you're not already doing, I think that's something you can do right now.
On that note too, though, I have to go back to, you know, with regards to overhead, like, now is not the time to be skimping on staff salaries though. Like, I know, you know, Jake Conway, our numbers guy, talks about certain percentages and stuff. And I've had conversations that are like, well, my staff it's at this percent. And I'm like, okay, I know, but, and I'm not telling you to overspend or, you know, break those rules, but it's about that balance. And it's like, where can we, you know, stop those Amazon payments so much to where you have an extra $200, $300 a week to spend on a part-time assistant, you know, that can actually help you be profitable and help you to focus on higher value activities. You know, staffing is not the first place to consider when it comes to watching overhead.
Yeah.
No. And it's funny because I wrote that down too, that like doctors, we have to be a good steward of the budgets. Like being lazy with the budget, the supplies, watching our credit card, that's unfair to the team, is my opinion. Right. Like, it's unfair of me to ask them to stretch themselves like they already do if I'm not going to try to control some of these expenses or really look at these on a consistent basis or really have them under control. I find that that's almost an unfair way for me to approach it. So I couldn't agree more that, you know, we want to be able to take those dollars from potentially areas that we haven't looked for before. No, we don't want to be extorted by people and things like that, of course. But I think what you're saying is, you know, get really good with the budgets so that you can be more flexible with the team, salary wise.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Deb, I'm sorry.
And I think involve your team in this too. I think it's great to see their leader, like, guys, I'm doing everything I can to get our overhead down, cut expenses. What do you see you could do? And we're pretty transparent with our team. We all know we have a budget. And I will say that our staff can get pretty creative with, it may seem like a silly thing, but we use scratch paper. We use the backs of paper for notes that we're writing down to each other. We don't buy lots of sticky notes and 50 million pens. We conserve what we've got, and our team really watches it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's such a great point too, Deb, is don't internalize that. Now, granted, don't tell the team, you know, the place is on fire, but, you know, oh my goodness. But I think that helping them, get creative with you. Because, you know, I don't think you want to shield what's happening in the outside world. They see it already. It affects you just, you know, as a business, like it affects anybody else. So I think that's such a beautiful point, Deb, of involving them as well. And hey, let's help the entire team stay a viable business, stay within our numbers, try to keep things healthy. No, I think that's a great one.
Just going back, you were talking about third-party financing. So we have Melissa Torres, who's in our comments here, asking a couple questions. One is, what things for outsourcing would you recommend for a startup? And can you just give a couple of examples of those third-party financing? I know we say we know them, but that's
sure, yeah.
About it, but of course, let's throw out a couple.
Absolutely. Well, when it comes to insurance verifications, and I will say I'm not always the best with all of these. I know Verific is the one that I hear a lot of people use.
No, third-party financing.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's like Proceed, Care Credit, Lending Point. I'm trying to think. Abella's kind of an alternative one to that, but those are the ones I think of usually as Care Credit, Proceed, Lending Point. Deb, can you think of any other ones?
I can't think of any other ones. Those are the ones that we use.
Okay, my apologies. I'm sorry. Yeah. Great question, by the way. But yeah, and then, kind of to go back to what Deb said, I do want to kind of point out we are very transparent with things. And I think, one thing that especially during this whole thing, I know for myself in team meetings, I often would say like, hey guys, I think we can all see what's happening. Now's the time. If you don't have a personal budget at home, here's some resources. And then I extend to them, hey guys, I love mint.com. One of our flexible benefits is they can meet with one of our financial people in our community and go and sit down for an hour with them. And their flex benefit can be used to pay for that. So they can learn, if they've never really sat down and budgeted their own money, they may be feeling the squeeze right now. And even with raises, they may still be feeling the squeeze. So helping them understand how to budget. I think shielding them from any personal accountability is not the right thing either. So I think that's one thing we're really accountable, in our office about having those kind of conversations with each other. And it's something that you can control that helps, I think from a stress management point, it doesn't shield them from what's going on. It actually just helps them, you standing side by side with them saying, hey, I'm in this with you. These are the resources I'm using. I'm going to extend the same resources to you. So I think that's one that sometimes can be tough because we're sitting there feeling it, not telling them anything, and then mad why they don't necessarily understand that point of view.
Oh, wait, they don't read our minds. I don't understand,
I know. Well, and I've had a couple of calls already today, and that was one of the topics that we discussed, that I was like, we expect them to act differently, but most of them have never been through anything like this. Inflation and this raising gas prices, a lot of them, especially in certain age ranges, they have no idea, so I'm like, gosh, we need to help them. So
I love that too. Like and I think that that's an amazing just leadership, standpoint, as far as that's something you can control, and just such a valuable tool. If I'm an employee and my employer says, hey, by the way, you guys can use this, and I want you to be sure you're being smart with your money, that would mean a lot to your, as an employee, to have my employer tell me that, versus, and I mean, of course too, I'm going to want a raise or whatever it might be, but if as an employer as well, like throwing money at someone who doesn't necessarily know how to spend isn't necessarily a good problem either.
Right. Well, and it's funny, I just had this conversation with my lead assistant this week where I was like, hey, I love you so much that I'm going to tell you, like, now's the time, and I actually kind of took her aside and I was like, I would highly suggest doing this, this, and this, because hey, listen, I don't know if this is necessarily going to get any better for a bit. So let's be proactive about it. And I think sometimes, we forget that we actually can sometimes do that. We can't take responsibility for their finances, but we can give them resources to help them do it. So,
power.
Yep, exactly. And then I think one of the last ones that I joke probably isn't going to be super popular, but I've only seen this need to it's one of those things that when I say it, doctors are like, but it's docs. I hate to say it, you got to learn how to be able to potentially work with an isolate and work in periods potentially alone. And you might be like, well, I'm not in that circumstance. I don't have that. I've got all the assistance I could ever want, or that will never happen to me. I have literally had conversations with doctors who said that, and then 2 weeks later, boom, gone. And they didn't know how to do anything. And talk about knowledge is power. Debbie knows how I feel about this, that I literally tell my doctors, because I had a doctor that he's no longer with us, but like he couldn't do anything. He didn't know how to do anything. And so if he didn't have somebody with him every single second of the moment, he was lost. He had to cancel his day. And I tell everybody, I'm like, I know this isn't popular, but I had a doctor who was like, okay. And she went ahead and she just bought a isolite and got the stuff, because it's a little bit of a, you know, especially for startups, it's a little bit expensive. And she learned how to do I talked her through like sterile line. I talked her through, how do you do all these things? How do you, you know, some of the basics. It was crazy because she also lost her assistant. And she was like, but I felt okay because I at least knew what to do. I had to slow down the flow a little bit, but I could run the day. It's not ideal, guys, and I get it. But now's the time that if you're super reliant on people, see if there's a way that you can figure out how to have that powerful, you know, be empowered to know these things for yourself. So that's the other one that you can control. And having that, I will say, having that makes me feel so much better. Because by the way, guys, it has still happened to me, huh, Deb, where I am left alone. And, you know, I can take an FMX, I can scan myself, I can do everything myself if need be. And I expect that of everyone. And I figure if I can't do it, why should I expect anybody else? But now's the time too, because you just don't know if you're going to be caught in that position. Anything to that, Debbie, or?
No, I mean, I think that's good. It's been a great, but stressful implementation of having them work alone, or, yeah.
Yeah, it's not ideal. We don't want it either, but there's been a few times where we were stretched super thin and we just didn't have the choice and had to figure things out. And I have now seen that play out multiple times with other doctors in different parts of the country too. So not the popular one, and I get that, but yeah, so I think we've talked about a plethora of tactical things you can control all across the board. I think the last thing to touch on is the mindset thing. And you know, doctors and leaders, I can't stress enough. And as Debbie knows, this is something that our leaders they have a check-in paper that every week they have to turn in. Did I focus on myself? Did I focus on my mental health? Did I read? Did I meditate? You know, what did I do to keep my mindset healthy? Because I do think it's really incredibly important, especially now. And, you know, I listened to something one time that talked about how, like, if you look around you, it's likely if what you see you don't love, it's likely a result of your own lazy thinking. And I was like, oh, I'm so offended. What? And then, you know, I had to think about it and I was like, darn it. I think there may be some pretty good truth to that often my own lazy thinking just led me to potentially circumstances that I didn't love. And then I focused on the stinky circumstances rather than what I could control. And it just kind of snowballed. I don't know if you ladies have seen that before, but the more you focus on the negative, the things that aren't working, nitpicking, the things that are bad, the patients are bad, we don't have people, we don't have hygienists. It's amazing how quickly that Armageddon sort of, you know, mindset permeates in the office.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it trickles down so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I'm like, you know, especially like Debbie and I, because usually we're not necessarily together. I'm like, we have to, despite what's happening, we've got to figure out how to be healthy with our minds. So what do we need to do? And sometimes it's like, Debbie, okay, you go on a vacation for a while and get yourself in a good place. Okay, now my turn. You know, I'm going to go for it. Sometimes it is that, but then we have to be really a good steward of even that focus time, that time that we get away, really being thoughtful in the perspectives and who we listen to and what we listen to. But I will say too, now's the time that if you're feeling that stress, really check in on your morning routine. Are you giving yourself some sort of self-care time on a consistent basis? Because if you aren't, especially some of those busy parents and things like that, it'll sneak up on you, and you know, because you just start to spiral in those thoughts, the sleepless nights of just not being able to get past those thoughts. So I think that's a big one that I would say can really help with stress. And it's kind of more of the subjective, ambiguous one. So
the fluffy stuff, right? With as Mark calls it, but our fluffy stuff is important too.
It's honestly, it's just as important as all of that tactical stuff, you know. I think the tactical stuff shows the team that you're doing something and that you're trying to make actually huge progress in the areas that you can. But I think coming in, and I don't believe in being falsely positive. I think people read that. I think being honest and transparent, but you've got to be able to do it from a perspective of moving forward. You know, here's what we can do. Guys, I know this isn't ideal right now. Guys, I can understand that feeling we may be having. But the good news is here's what we can focus on. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can celebrate.
Exactly.
You know,
those tactical things that we just went over, like that's controlling what you can control, which will then put your mindset in a better space because you can think, you know, hey, at least I'm doing these things. So that's kind of step one. Something too, you even mentioned, you know, it's really easy to get into these negative thought patterns and spiral. And it's hard just to be like, no, just don't think like that. Well, that's not, you know, sometimes that's not helpful either. I had someone tell me once, like, just start to notice when you're thinking like that. You don't have to change it. You don't have to automatically be positive, but just start to notice anytime that you're feeling that way. And just, you know, start there. It's a little piece. You're just like, oh, there I go with that negative thinking again. And don't be hard on yourself about it. It's just noticing.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the first little piece that's like, tackle. It's like eating an elephant, right? It's just a one little bite. We're just going to notice it. And then we can start to, you know, work on it from there, you know, maybe noticing and changing a little thing that you can, like, oh, I was mad that it's raining. I literally can't control that. So we're going to,
Yeah. Well, and it's so true. Like even just being able to notice that you're getting in that spiral. It's so important. Go ahead, Debbie. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's important to find somebody away from the office that you can visit with and you can hold each other accountable. My husband and I do this, and you and I do this because it is so easy to get, you know, it's easy for me to go home at the end of the day. I'm exhausted. I just want to sit down and watch TV, binge watch TV for 2 hours. That is not good for me. And, you know, he knows that, and we hold each other accountable, and find somebody that can help you.
And when you do it with someone in the office too, and you know, they spiral into, you know, bad word, but bitch fest, you know, and then it's just this toxic spiral that's not helpful. My second thing after noticing was like, just don't say it out loud. After I noticed, like, you know what? Okay, now I'm just not going to say it out loud. Or I would be sending a text and I'm like, nope, I'm just not, like, there's no point in sending it. Like, what is this going to accomplish? Like, it's just not, you know?
So it's funny. And it's so funny. So Ashley, by the way, just to kind of wrap this up, there's actually science to that. So I have my team, like one of the things everybody knows we do is on our weekly accountability meetings, we listen to something or we're reading a book together just to kind of keep all of our mindsets kind of in the right direction. Our vernacular the same, how we talk to each other the same. But it's funny because I think, right, Deb, it was a YouTube that I had everybody watch, and it was about how incredibly powerful spoken negative words are. And so they literally researched this gentleman who, he's a scientist, and all he did on one of the pro teams of some sport, I don't know, all he did when he went in there, the only thing he did is he told the players, because they were, you know, lots of negative thoughts, and in the locker room they're all, you know, negative, saying stuff. The only thing he had him change is he said, hey, listen, when you have those negative thoughts, think it's fine, think them. The only thing I'm telling you is you can't speak them.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it changed the entire dynamic.
Exactly.
And literally what he was showing, remember this, Deb? His science showed how ridiculously, like, it draws all attention and it just continues focusing, and it becomes like 7 times more potent than just negative thoughts. So spoken negativity is so powerful. So you were onto something and you didn't even know it, Ashley. Yeah. Yep. So I think, hopefully this has given everybody just some ideas of, if you're caught right now in feeling like, I think the patients are frustrated, I can't get enough people in, my team seems kind of bummed and down, or all my team wants is money, or, all of these things are happening. I think we've kind of gone through and given some both tactical ways and mindset ways to get yourself in a healthier position. So hopefully that's been helpful. But, I'll kind of end it with the sense that, right now, if you're looking to hire more team members, all of what we said is so important, because think about it, these new team members that you may be so excited to bring in, if they're not coming into an atmosphere that's positive, progressive, solution-driven, growth mindset, if they're not coming into that, who's going to want to stay anyway? Because they made the decision to come back into, work with other people because they're looking for a work family.
For connection, yeah.
Yep.
They're not looking for negative connection. They're looking for positive connection.
Yep. So I tell doctors, like, right now is the time to address everything that we just said, not only for your stress, but really for the team that you have now because you love them, and for the ones that you're going to hopefully be able to bring on. It's so important for all of them. So leaders, if you're listening, doctors, hopefully we gave you some tips, some empowerment, some ideas to kind of go and start working on. But anything else, ladies, that we didn't hit?
Last thing too, with regards to mindset, I use Calm app. It's a meditation app. And also, if you have the American Express Platinum card, they will pay for your Calm membership. So I'm a big, if you guys have listened to my credit card talk, I'll do another one on those because I'm obsessed with credit card points and benefits. But anyway, right now Amex will pay for your Calm app membership. So if you've never used it, but you have an Amex, give it a shot, do a free trial. It's calming, it's enjoyable. There's even just like sleep stories. You can listen to Matthew McConaughey tell sleep stories. That will put me to sleep and have lovely dreams.
Yep.
Anyway.
I too I also am a Calm fan, for sure, but there's so many things out there. It's just
Totally.
You have to actually utilize them.
Totally.
So, well, thank you, ladies. I super appreciate the time. Deb, thank you so much, because I do know how much it means for you to be able to kind of jump on and help us as well, especially as, a leader in the practice as well. It's all good stuff to get to hear from you too. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. And until next time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.